All right, good morning, everyone. It's right at 9 o'clock. Still got a few folks joining, but we'll get started. Welcome, VCE Ag Today, Thursday morning, November 12th, 2020. Hopefully everyone, as Michael just said, is surviving. Hopefully not too much flooding going on, but I think most folks are experiencing pretty ample rainfall today. So great day to sit down and talk about some dicamba updates. So we're pleased to be joined by Dr. Michael Flesner, Extension Weed Specialist with Virginia Tech and Virginia Cooperative Extension this morning. And Michael's going to share some updates with us on over-the-top dicamba products in corn and, soybean and cotton production systems. And he's going to share some of the recent updates from the EPA reapprovals of some of those products and some considerations moving forward. So before we get started, Michael, I'd just like to make a comment for the folks on the call this morning. If you're with us, if you have questions, if you please hold those to the end of the presentation, we'll open it up for questions and comments at the end. Also, if you'd like, you can enter those into the chat box and we'll address those accordingly at the end of the presentation. So thank everyone for being here this morning. Thank you, Dr. Flesner, and appreciate you joining us, and the floor is yours.
Well, great to be with you guys again this morning, and thanks for having me again. I'm going to pull up the slides here for those of you on the can see screen, but not a tech. But so the first thing I want to do is go through some disclaimers here, because this is not a dicamba training, and the dicamba training is still going to be mandatory. So I want to make that clear. And it's really not a replacement for the full label. We got to read that, understand it, follow that. And then also not only just the label with these products, but those associated websites that those labels point us to, right? The other thing is we have federal labels approved through the EPA, but they are still working their way through the Virginia registration process through VDAX right now. So XtendiMax and Agenia actually aren't approved yet. No reason to believe that they won't be in the next couple of weeks, and certainly well before spray season in 2021. Tavium's a little bit of the oddball because it wasn't thrown out, for lack of a better term, with the lawsuit. It is still available, but its registration expires in 2020, and then that one's actually been reapproved too. So it's also working its way through the Virginia process. The other thing I want to say before we get into this is that not everything is completely sorted out yet. We have labels, and you can go look at those online, but we don't have the websites that it refers you to are not up and running. So finding out which nozzles and tank mixtures and certain tank mixtures in previous registrations required use of a additional drift reduction agent in those, and so we don't know what those types of details are right now. But I'm going to do my best here to get us all on the same page with where are we and what we know. So October 27th, you probably heard that EPA approved the registration of Ingenia from BASF, XtendiMax with Vapor Grip technology from Bayer, and then Tavium plus Vapor Grip technology from Syngenta. We had Fexapan in previous dicamba registrations, but that one is sort of missing in action here. And I'm not sure if we'll see that one right now, but I think the good news for a lot of us that have used dicamba and had success controlling weeds with it is that we are going to have options for the 2021 season and perhaps beyond that. So these were 5-year registrations with some new application requirements, that a lot of the same stuff, but a little bit of modifications to the stuff that we've had previously. So and previously we've just had these 2-year registrations, right? So this is a little bit longer one. And so hopefully that'll stick here. All right, so what are the highlights? We'll go through some of the big changes and then go into more detail here subsequently. So one thing is that these labels are shorter now because they've removed all the other uses of dicamba, sort of the traditional uses, the pasture and forage use, the uses are all. It's really how we went. It's going to be in P buffer VRA, a volatility reduction agent, mandatory, and we'll go into more of that in the next slide here. There's now national cutoff dates. So previously there wasn't a date except for the growth stages for either soybean or cotton. and certain states had certain cutoff dates, but now there's a national cutoff date for soybeans on June 30th and cotton of July 30th. And I guess it's up to and including those dates. So you can spray on June 30th for soybeans, for example. And so that's, that's a big change for us. A lot of our double crop soybean acres means that dicamba is not going to be allowed to be used in those acres. And even some of our late season soybean might fall outside of that window when we spray it. So that's going to be a big change for us. There is potential for like a special local needs registration to extend that. And so I'm looking for feedback on that. I've got some mixed feelings myself. And so if you want to send me some feedback, please do, or go through one of your agents and they can let me know, because I'd like to know what you think about that. All right, but those are the national cutoff dates. We're also limited to 2 over-the-top applications per season in both soybean and cotton. And so that's what it was previously in soybean, but you had more options in cotton. But so it's really limited to cotton there, is the change from previously. Another change is the downwind buffer. Previously, that was 110 feet outside what I'm calling the pesticide use limitation area, and that's what the EPA calls it. The labels are just calling that like the downwind buffer, I guess. Or no, sorry, the pesticide. It would be where the endangered species buffer comes into play there. So, but anyway, it went from 110 feet up to 240 feet. I mean, so 110 feet was pretty tough to comply with in a lot of our small fields. That might have been 15, 20% of the field. Now it's even more than that. So that's going to be tough. But there are some instances where if we use a qualified drift reduction technology, we might be able to reduce that downwind buffer back to the 110 feet. Okay, so those are the highlights. Let's go into a little bit more detail. First of all, the volatility reduction agent. And so it's really a pH buffering agent, and we want to keep the pH buffered because if dicamba becomes a free acid, that's the formulation, or the when dicamba is most likely to volatilize. And so if you keep the pH up away from that, it's tougher for that to occur, right? So we have less volatility or slower volatility. So that has to be included in every application. And so there's the full list is going to be on the websites. So the tank mix websites are going to vary between each product label, right? But you have like the XtendiMax applicationrequirements.com and similar for the other products, right? So the full list of what those volatility reduction agents, those products are, is going to be listed on those websites. But Bayer is, they always sort of recommend their own product, but you can use these other products as well. So Bayer's recommended product is going to be Vapor Grip Extra Agent, and that's going to go out at 20 ounces per acre minimum. BASF has their version of that, which is Centris, and that's going to go out 4 to 16 fluid ounces per acre. So that's got to be included in every application now, and that's a big change from last year. This is different than the drift reduction agent. So certain tank mixtures in previous registrations, we had to add a drift reduction agent to the tank if we had, the dicamba product and several of the other products that we might want to mix in there, like Roundup. So with XtendiMax and Tavium, that's also going to have to be included in every application. The Ingenia label says basically unless otherwise indicated on its website. So I think for the bulk of our applications, you're going to have up to 4 things in the tank. You're going to have the water, the dicamba product, the volatility reduction agent, and the drift reduction agent. And then, of course, we're probably going to be adding Roundup in there or other things as well. So there's going to be a lot going into the tank with these things. But one thing I would say is these pH things that alter that and water conditioning agents, those types of products, we always want to add those to the tank first, let those mix into solution, and then come back with the other products there. Okay. The downwind buffer. All right, so this again increased from 110 feet to 240 feet outside of the pesticide use limitation area. If we're within a pesticide use limitation area, that's actually now 310 feet downwind plus that 57-foot omnidirectional buffer. And so that's where the website, or sorry, the label points you to EPA's Bulletin's live website, and you have to consult that within the month of application. And I'll show you what that looks like for Virginia on the next slide here. This downwind buffer can be reduced, and I'll show you an example of one of these drift reduction technologies, such as a hooded sprayer, but those also have to be listed on the product's website as one of these approved technologies. So the downwind buffer, again, is different than if there's sensitive crops downwind, right? And so there's really no change on the label to the sensitive crops areas or residential areas downwind. If those are downwind, the label still says do not spray. It's the other areas like, roads and wood lots and areas prepared for planting but haven't been planting yet. Those types of things that aren't sensitive to dicamba, that's when the buffer is in play. But if you have sensitive crops, that's when there is no buffer. It's just do not spray. Okay, so here's a picture of Virginia from the EPA Bulletin's live website I got a couple days ago. So this is for the month of Virginia. You can see we have no use limitation areas in Virginia. And so really that 57-foot omnidirectional buffer and the 300 plus foot buffer doesn't correspond to us. It's really the 240-foot buffer, I believe it was, that we have to comply with now. But this is for November. This could change between now and spray season in 2021. And so again, you have to consult this website in the month of application. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure what these drift reduction technologies that are going to be listed on the label are, but this is one that BASF has put out with some of their literature on it. And so basically it's using a wheeled boom sprayer that has a hood on it. And so this would be a case where you could spray, reduce that buffer 210 feet from the 240 feet. I don't know, we have a lot of these around and it's a pretty big investment to cover just a little bit more ground. But nonetheless, that's out there if you want to take advantage of it. Okay, a lot of things have remained pretty much unchanged on the label. And so I want to run through those pretty quickly because there's still a long list here of things that we have to comply with on these labels. So one thing is there's still restricted use pesticides. So you have to be a certified applicator to purchase and apply and mix that product. But uncertified persons may transport containers. So I think that's helpful if you're one of the co-ops that's running shuttles and that kind of thing. The training requirement, it looked like that was going to be this year and then every other year on a couple labels, but it's actually going to be annually, which is not really a change from what we've had previously, right? So we have to take the training annually. Record keeping is all the same. There's, I think, 22 or 23 different things we've got to write down for every application. The only thing that's changed that is you also have to note which volatility reduction agent or VRA you used. So that's just one more thing to write down there. We still, getting into the sort of equipment side of spraying, still we have to have 3 to 10 miles per hour, less than 50 mile an hour sprayer speed, a boom height of 24 inches or less above the canopy, and a minimum of 15 gallons per acre of spray water. No AMS. We still have to comply with the nozzles and operating pressures of those nozzles that's listed on the websites. Only approved tank mixes can be used. Again, the label refers us to the website for what those are. And again, we're not really sure what those are yet because those websites aren't up and running just yet. Previously we had this sort of rain was in the forecast, and it was kind of a gray language about, well, it was forecasted. What does that mean? But what it says is applications are prohibited within 48 hours of rain forecasted expected to exceed soil capacity. So certainly, 2 days ago would have been a rainfall forecasted expected to exceed soil capacity. But a lot of times that's probably not, something in the forecast there. So that's, I think, going to be a lot easier to comply with there. We still have applications prohibited during temperature inversions and from 2 hours before sunset to 1 hour after sunrise. So no overnight spraying, basically. And the other thing is we have to check sensitive crop registries before application. So there's a lot of things that haven't changed. And I guess we're getting used to complying with this stuff at this point. Okay. So I'm sure you guys have some questions about that. I do want to talk about a couple other things here, some other developments. And so you really can't please everybody is what a lot of this is. So the Center for Biological Diversity and the Center for Food Safety, those are the two groups that sued the EPA last time, which resulted in this right in the middle of spraying season this past year for those registrations to be thrown out. They have vowed to sue again, basically on the same grounds. And as you recall, the court ruled that EPA did violate FIFRA, the FIFRA Act, but they did not rule on whether EPA violated the Endangered Species Act. So I think the courts are going to hear this case, and we'll see where that goes. You know, it took them 2 years. They started that lawsuit in 2017, and decision wasn't reached until 2019. So I think it's going to take a while for that to go through court. And so for at least for this next year, those lawsuits, I don't think will come into play, but hard to predict that kind of thing. The other thing is the American Soybean Association and a Texas cotton group, the Plains Cotton Growers, are actually suing the EPA for being too restrictive. They think it's basically possible to comply with these labels, and they want them opened up. So there's people suing the EPA on from both angles there. So we'll see where that stuff goes, but I guess stay tuned on that. The other thing is EPA has changed its interpretation of a 24C labeling. And so 24C is a special local needs. And they used to allow, and sort of all the, I guess, precedent is that it really allowed for nimbleness in states to expand, or in some cases actually restrict the label. And so a lot of states were using the 24C process with these dicamba products to add additional restrictions within their states. But the EPA has said that they've changed their interpretation on that, and states can no longer restrict the label through that process, only expand it. But they might be able to expand it with the 24A process. So this kind of gets into the laws a little bit, but the 24A process is much more cumbersome and difficult and time consuming to do. So we'll sort of see where that goes. All right, but I do want to say, you know, we and a lot of you out there that have used dicamba have seen success in controlling Palmer amaranth and our other tough to control broadleaf weeds with it. And here's just a picture of that compared to our non-treated. You see a nice research grade Palmer amaranth pressure on the left, and a real nice clean plot there on the right, which was in this case happened to be Ingenia Roundup and Zidua applied at planting, and then again 4 weeks after planting. So, you know, these things work really well. And I think that's something, you know, I don't want to get lost in here, but I do want to say, you know, for these expanded buffer areas, or for areas that we don't want to spray dicamba because we have sensitive things around us, we do still have other options. And this is a slide I put up at previous VCE Ag Days. And so you see in the green here, for those of you who just can't see the screen, it's basically a table out of our pest management guide that's just been cut down to fit on the screen. And you see there's options for Palmer amaranth, common ragweed, and horseweed that can be pretty good for us if that don't include dicamba. Certainly dicamba works on these, but we've got the other PPO options in terms of Cobra, Ultra Blazer, FlexStar, and Reflex. If we're in an Extend Flex bean right now, we have the addition of Liberty that we can use in there, and Liberty is effective on Palmer and ragweed. And so we have those options there. And so, you know, I just want to reiterate that we do have other options besides dicamba that work for us really well in Virginia. The other thing is I want to mention is optimizing the Extend Flex system. And so we've done a little bit of this research. I've got this YouTube video highlighted, and I'll post a link here in the chat of some work in Arkansas. But the Extend Flex system, right, it gives us the option to put dicamba and Liberty out in that field. Previously, Extend Flex system in cotton, we weren't allowed to put out dicamba and Liberty together, but we could put them out in separate applications. We'll see where that goes with these new labels. We don't know what that is yet. But what this research and some of our research in Virginia has seen is that the initial application of Dicamba followed by Liberty 14 days later results in a pretty clean plot there. That's really optimizes the control we get with those two. It's much better than putting out Liberty followed by Dicamba, and in a lot of cases it's better than putting out the two in a tank mixture. And so that I think is a real good result in terms of control of the weeds. And it's also good for herbicide resistance because we're switching up those two two groups, right? We have a group 4 in Dicamba and a group 10 Liberty. So we're switching up the sites of action and putting out multiple effective sites of action there. So the Dicamba, really kicks it pretty hard, and then the Liberty pretty much puts it in its grave there. So that's yeah, just want to reiterate that that's really how I think we can optimize the Extend Flex system. If you're looking at the Enlist system, same thing. The Oxen herbicide followed by Liberty is really the best way to go. So in an Enlist system, it would be 2,4-D followed by Liberty 14 days later. All right, so to close out, and then we'll get into some questions. We had these herbicide resistant weeds workshops queued up for last March, and then COVID happened and we canceled them all. And so we're going online with this. We also are going to do some in-person locations. We're still working on exactly where those are going to be. But if you're on the call here, it's basically going to be the same thing, a Zoom meeting. And if you want to register, I'll put this link in the chat for you. But those are going to be 2 Tuesdays in a row, and you can choose which time of day. It'll be the same program at 8 to 10 in the morning or 6 to 8 p.m. On Tuesday, December 8th. We'll really focus in on the herbicides for that first Tuesday, and then the second Tuesday, December 12th, we'll go into the non-chemical strategies that we can use and develop those really a complete herbicide and non-herbicide program around controlling these weeds. So those are the dates, and look forward to hopefully seeing a lot of you guys there. So I did see some, I'll go on a question here. I did see some stuff in the chat box. So one was from Brad Jarvis. What pH are you trying to achieve to reduce volatility? So I don't know if there's a specific number, but we don't want to get acidic pHs. And so when we start getting down into below 6, certainly 5, and the lower you go, the worse it gets. And so what happens is the Dicamba, if it's in a non-acidic pH, it's still attached to like the Batmus salt or the diclycolamine for the most part in solution. But as it becomes more acidic, those things tend to detach, and then you've got a free acid dicamba molecule in solution, and that's what volatilizes very easily. So it's just trying to keep the pH where those two things are coupled together, and it's a bigger, heavier molecule. It's hard to volatilize. So I don't know if we need to be pushing our pHs like up to 8, but certainly if we use the products and the pHs, it's probably going to be where we want it to be. So hopefully that answered that question. Another question was, is the now mandatory VRA in addition to, or does it replace the DRA? And so my understanding of that is it's in addition to the DRA. So there's going to be the volatility reduction agent. The VRA is going to be mandatory in every application for every product. The DRA is going to be mandatory for Tavium and Extendamax. But right now, the Ingenia label says consult their tank mix label, or sorry, their tank mix website. And it may be that it's only in certain tank mixtures that you have to use the DRA. But for Extendamax and Tavium, you're going to have the product, the VRA, and the DRA in every single application. And I suspect for Ingenia, it's going to be for most of those applications as well. Yeah, I think that's all the questions. Are there other questions, either on the line or if you guys want to put those in the chat box?
Hey, Michael, thanks for joining us this morning. Appreciate you being here and offering these comments. If you're on the line this morning, you should have the capacity to unmute yourselves now. So if you just click the microphone in the bottom left-hand corner, you should be able to unmute and ask questions or comments if you have those. Michael, I know one thing you mentioned was the supplemental label for the special needs, and I noticed we've got a lot of agents on the line with us this morning. So I don't know if now maybe would be appropriate time to get some feedback from some of those other areas across the state. I know here in Eastern Virginia we have a fair bit of double crop acreage, and that may be a situation where we need to clean up some of those fields a little later on with some of these weeds. So I'd just be interested to maybe hear from some of the other agents down in the Tidewater area that are on the line, or western central part of the state, just to see, to help you maybe get a little feedback for that.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I guess I think South Carolina is considering using a 24C to expand the label to allow applications after June 30th to soybeans. And certainly that affects pretty much all of our double crop acres, but it's also a hot time of the year with a lot of crops out in the landscape that might be affected by off-target movement. So
this is Brad Jarvis. I just, it's hard to ask questions on the subject because it's an opinion more than it is science. And so the regulations that have been set forth by EPA, are these science-based facts, or are these just good, safe measures they think that will prevent crop damage, drift issues? Doug Horn's doing a lot of the research are doing some tests, and I don't mean to put Doug on the spot, but we are doing pH testing of tank mixes, and like you said, these buffer sizes, we don't have any of the restricted zones, the endangered species. So luckily we don't have that large one, but our field sizes are so small. I don't see how we can employ some new technology to prevent resistance without opening the box of some different ways to do business. And you did share some of those that we already have in our toolbox we can use, but a lot of our farmers in the northern Piedmont have embraced this. They like this XtendiMax. It's a product that they can use just like they use Roundup products. Not a lot of thought or effort other than their training, but they scratch their heads at this. They don't even know how to apply these buffers or Downwind Buffer. They're just confused at how you handle this product now.
Yeah, so I will say there has been a lot of experiments looking at off-target movement, and is that spray drift versus volatility. And these are, a lot of these have been done on large commercial areas where they'll spray a 40, 50 acre block. They'll have air sensors in and around and downwind, in addition to sensitive soybean plants, so they'll have both the analytical data and a bio indicator of a sensitive soybean out there in the landscape, and really trying their best to, in a real world scenario, to document how far this can move and what the results of that are if it does. And so I think the EPA is doing their best to try to approach this in a scientific manner for sure. There's a lot of studies both from the industry side as well as from the academics to support some of this stuff that's on the label. But yeah, at the end of the day, they've got to draw a line, and you can't please everybody. So, I would applaud the EPA for trying to find a way to bring us this technology that we need, that the farmers like, that is controlling our weeds really well, but also try to do it in a way that is, mitigates some of these other concerns. And so maybe we've come down in maybe the worst possible spot for some would say, right? Whereas we have it, but it's impossible to apply legally. So they're in a tough spot for sure. And I agree with the concerns that you shared there, Brad. So Yeah, I'm just I'm trying to make sense of it all myself too. I guess a lot of times is how can we do this in a way that's effective for our weeds, but also in a way that that we don't have this off-target movement, right? So, um, yeah, I think the Extend Flex soybean coming on the market is helpful, right? Because now we have liberty that we can use in those areas. Um, so that should be helpful.
So is there a release date for Extend Flex, or is it available now?
It's available now. The European Union approved it back a couple months ago now, I think. So it is available. You know, the selecting a variety is probably the most important choice for you as far as making money all year, and then maybe planting date after that. The one thing I don't think we really have a great grip on of with the Extend Flex beans is we just don't have a lot of those like official variety trials from any of the universities, because this past planting season, if you were going to plant those in your variety trials, you had to put in all those restrictions to keep those beans out of commercial grain channels. So harvest barriers and signage and all this kind of stuff. So we don't have a lot of data on those varieties to help support whether that's a variety you want to purchase or not, but they are available for purchase, certainly. So um,
Michael, one final comment that I'll make. I know myself and most of the agents on the call this morning, and in the past, we've had at crops conferences and producer meetings, company representatives come to offer these dicamba specific trainings for these products. And I know they also typically had an online training that folks could participate in as well. Is that going to continue to be the case from these companies as online trainings for producers if they wish to use this in the 2021 growing season? I asked that due to the COVID concerns and the fact that a lot of larger crops conferences and meetings will not be happening this winter. So just trying to look ahead and give folks some information on how to get that training.
Yeah, I think that's going to be what the trainings looked like previously. It's going to be pretty much what they look like moving forward. They are modifying that training somewhat, obviously, to present what's on these new labels. I think the EPA had some other concerns that they wanted addressed in those trainings, but we don't know yet. But I don't see any reason why they would change from last year. Where there was company reps presenting those as well as online trainings available. So I suspect that's what we'll see, and those will probably get started right after the new year.
Hey, Robbie.
Yes, sir, Mike.
Just a side note, I got a call from Shannon Ellis late yesterday afternoon. She wanted to express her regrets for not being able to make it. She had another meeting she'd already spoken to be at, but she wanted everybody to understand that as a representative for BASF, they were going to do everything that they could do to certify everybody, whether it be online or in person. But she just wanted to pass that along, that they are in this. They're in this 100%. So all we got to do is get in touch with her.
Great.
Thanks, Mike. Any other questions this morning for Dr. Flesner before we finish up? All right, well, appreciate you being with us, Michael. Excellent presentation. I think hopefully it answers some questions for folks. Like you said, it may have confused them even further as to whether or not this is possible, but just appreciate you being here as always, and great presentation. Next week on VCE Ag Today, our topics of discussion are going to be agency updates. Typically this time of year, we do have our crops conferences. Unfortunately, with the COVID situation, that's not going to be an option in some areas this winter. So we're going to have presentations from the USDA FSA office, NRCS offices, and some soil and water conservation districts here in Eastern Virginia, touching on some of their programs, sign-up deadlines, those type of things. So please join us if you're interested in that information. We'll be glad to share it here tomorrow or next week on VCE Ag Today. Final thoughts. I'd just like to thank the production team as always, Mike Broda, Stephanie Romelchuk, Trent Jones and Laura Maxine for all their hard work to put the program together. And if you have the opportunity, if you please fill out an evaluation at the evaluation link. We'd love to hear from you. Any comments, feedback as far as future presentations or what you think was good or bad. Hope everyone has a great rest of their Thursday morning, and appreciate everyone joining us. Michael, thanks again for being here, and everyone take care.